Hello, my name is Grian and welcome back to another episode of Minecraft Build School. Today I'm going to be teaching you the techniques in how to terrain Minecraft areas. So as you can see, I've got a bit of a rough, naturally generated area and I'm going to transform it into what you see here. Some nice trees, rocks, some hills and a bit of a cliffside. So it should give you everything you need to know on how to transform your area around your house, especially if it looks a little bit like this. So let's get a good aerial view at the area that I'm going to be working with today. Now I've chosen a particularly bad area just to try and get the point across. I imagine your area may be more varied, but hopefully the techniques that I'm going to show you will help you transform it. So the first thing to always do is just prep the area a little bit. That's always your first step. Try and get it looking a little bit more neat and tidy, maybe even flatter so you know what to do. The next step is to visualize. You want to take a good look at the area and try and figure out in your head and plan ahead what you want to do. So on my example, I have a hill in the middle and I've got a steep slope on the right hand side. So my immediate thought is we're going to make that hill a bit smoother, introduce a cliff on the right hand side, and because there's a dip we might even add some water in. So what I'm going to do first, and you don't have to do it this way, but I recommend it, is add in a skeleton framework of what you want to do first, or part of your visualizing process, so that you can get an idea of how it might look. So what I've done is taken my dirt block and made sort of a bell shape, or a cross section, almost like a wireframe, just trying to visualize the hill itself. So as you can see, none of the sides of my hill are the same. I'm trying to make it as natural looking as possible. However, whatever you place by hand, it won't look like naturally generated structures. It won't look like traditional Minecraft, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just different. The other thing, of course, is part of the cleaning and visualizing process is you might want to add yourself in a pond. So I had this natural dip in mine, so I've just edited it to make it a bit smoother, and that's where the water's probably going to go. I'm not entirely sure yet. That's all part of the visualizing process. So as I said, I've got this steep slope on the right hand side here, and what I thought I'd do is just make that even steeper by adding in a cliffside. And that pretty much it means ignoring exactly what's there already, just building over it. So I've made a slope over, and I'm going to create a cliff edge first. I'm not going to start from the bottom and build in stone, but I'm going to create an edge that works its all the way around, almost like a boomerang shape that's going to work around what's already there, but obviously high enough that it's going to be a little bit of a cliff. Obviously, the higher you go, the more stone and stuff you're going to need, so please be aware of how much you might need in terms of resources. So if we take a little step back, we can see how this might look. It's obviously very bare bones, but you can see there's going to be a bit of water where I'm excavating there, a cliff on the right hand side, and a general hill. And once you've got the idea of where you're going to put things, it's time to start making that happen. So once you're happy with how clean the area is, and I'm only doing a little bit at the moment, you'll notice that the rest of it's still very messy, it's time to actually start putting these bits together. So what we're going to do is essentially connect up the framework, the wire framework of the hill, and the key part here, I don't really want to insult you about how to make a hill, but the key part is having the bottom layer a bit bigger than every subsequent one. Now my hill is fairly steep. The thing you want to avoid when making a hill is having a lot of straight diagonal lines, you know, block after block after block, just straight diagonal. You'll see that I'm trying to remove any very straight lines in it and trying to make it as circular as possible, and that might mean making the entire thing a different shape, by making the bottom layer even bigger and subsequent layers after that. So as you can see, I've tried to avoid very direct diagonals on my hill, and it's kind of come together in a decent shape. I'd say no more than 3, possibly 4 diagonals. You always want to have the 1 or 2 after them. And once you've connected them all up layer by layer, it should equal roughly what your framework indicated. For the cliff, I've added in a plateau on the top, just covering it with dirt and adding that couple of extra layers. A big mistake people commonly make is just making one flat layer. Always remember to add a few more. Underneath, adding some stone is a very simple thing to do, but you need to make sure that it does overhang. You want it to go up straight and then even further over. You could make a different cliff that goes backwards. There is a different sort of design for all of these things. My recommendation here would be look at cliffs that you want to make and try and mimic them. My one's a very simple one. It's perhaps not the best in the world, but you kind of get the idea. There's plenty of little nooks and crannies in there, lots of little holes. It doesn't look like your normal Minecraft cliff, and I think that's kind of key with this kind of terraining. And of course it will be hollow on the inside, so make sure there's no little holes in there. So the next thing is you've kind of got an idea, and you can see how this area's already been smoothed out quite a lot, and there's always more smoothing to be done, so don't be scared to add in little blocks here or there. You might want to consider mixing in some other grey blocks with your cliff, particularly andesite, as it does go very well with stone, but I also added in some cobblestone along with some mossy because I decided to add in an actual water feature, so it does kind of tie it all in together. And if you do add ponds or lakes, it's a very easy thing to decorate later on, so I would definitely recommend, if you're terraining, add some water features in, or maybe even add a waterfall from your cliff to a lake or a pond or whatever you decided to make. But remember, water sources are very easy to decorate and they add a lot to your landscape. So you might have noticed that that side's looking pretty intense with a steep hill and a cliff, and I've left this side very open and bare, and that's because we're going to do something slightly different here, something very much less intense. So we're going to create a few smaller hills, and we're going to try and make a more gentle terrain on this side of the building, and that's because you want a bit of variation in your terrain around it. And like I said, the smoothing process is never over, and I don't really want to insult you again by telling you how to make a hill, but the slightly less intense hills tend to be maybe 1 to 4 blocks in height, and they tend to span over a much wider area. So there is a bit of an issue with terraining because you can't hand terrain the entire Minecraft world. It would be physically impossible. Where do you stop? Well, that's up to you. I like to sort of gradually make everything intertwine with the natural Minecraft generated terrain, but you might want to have just a physical standpoint where you just have, no, I've had enough, that's it, that's the end. So it's up to you, but you want to try and integrate it as much as possible at the end. So now we're on to number 4, which is the decoration. And one of the best things to start with is a pathway from your front door out through your terrain. You want the path to kind of take a good route through the terrain that you've made because you've put hard work into making this look good. A good place to start is to take your shovel and just right click the grass until you've got path blocks themselves, and you want to have a few speckled out of the normal line as well as a bit of detail. Don't just make it a firm straight line, and then add in some coarse dirt and maybe some spruce or maybe even some jungle wood and connect the slabs into the blocks themselves. So it's a very messy pathway. The next thing, of course, another detail is to add in some rocks. I've made mine out of cobblestone because you get some nice slabs and staircases to go with it to make it look really rough, and then mix in some soul sand, which is a very dark kind of dirt, around them to try and integrate those rocks into their surroundings. Of course, if your biome is different, you might want to choose some different blocks. I imagine that it would look incredibly different if you're in a snowy biome. If you're making a rock on a hill, you definitely want to make sure that you remove the hill underneath and make sure that the rock physically goes right down into the hollow space. You don't want it sitting idly on top of the hill because it looks kind of strange. You can of course make the rocks out of normal stone or even stone brick if you're feeling bold. Again, there's a lot of opportunity for different palettes. The next thing, of course, is part of the detailing is to add in your own custom trees. Now, this is a very staple product of having a hand-terrained area. You could use normal Minecraft trees, but they're instantly recognizable as normal Minecraft trees. If you put the effort in to making a few custom trees like this, it will make all the difference. You start off with a fairly sizable trunk. You don't want to go too massive, and you can use some fences, especially spruce, as it matches oak pretty closely. You can create a lot of little branches made out of the slabs and sort of connect them up with fences if they don't quite sit nicely, sort of spread them out as much as possible, and then fill in the surroundings with some oak leaves and maybe even mix in a different leaf type as well. I've chosen spruce, and make sure that there's some branches going upwards as well as to the sides. Trees tend to grow up and not just spread out widely. So that's kind of a key part. So this is kind of like a mini oak tree custom made one. You don't have to have exactly the same tree type throughout your hand terrained area. So what I decided to do was to add in a couple of variations. So the second one I decided to make was more of a pine tree. So I still used oak wood, and I decided to make just a very thin and tall tree. Now this, again, they're not that much bigger than your big Minecraft trees, but they look distinctly different. So the key to making a custom pine tree is to cover it in leaves, but leave these very big sort of patches so you can see the wood behind it, and then just top the tree off itself. So it goes ever so slightly thicker and deeper at the bottom, and then it sort of thins out as it goes to the top. Again, remember to mix in different leaf types. Now, to save myself some time, I copy and pasted the one pine tree that I made and just pasted it all over. Obviously, if you're doing this in survival, it will take a significant amount of time to paste in trees, but the good thing is, if you're making lots of custom trees, is they will all look very, very different, and that's very important when you're hand terraining. You can kind of tell that all my trees are the same, but it's not a big deal because this is just a sort of proof of concept. And you'll also notice that I put in some cobblestone slabs to kind of look like little rocks just dotted around. You could even add buttons, which I didn't do, but now it's time to vegetate, and that's kind of part of the detailing process, but I want to put it in its own category because placing flowers and stuff isn't as easy as you might think. You don't want to just go nuts and place them absolutely everywhere. You probably want a few patches here or there mixed in with some double length grass. You may also want to consider adding in a custom sort of fence either side of your pathway. I'd recommend sort of breaking it up. Now, if you've got a more grey palette, you might want to go for a basic cobblestone wall, but basically what I've done is added in sort of logs with some fences on the top and some slabs either side of them. They don't really function as just a normal block wall. It is very higgledy-piggledy. It's meant to look very sort of rough, but it helps sort of hone you down that pathway. And I also removed a lot of the long grass that was there from the sort of original terrain. And then there you have it. That is my hand terrain area. Now, I could probably spend another couple of hours fine-tuning this as much as possible, but I'm actually pretty happy with how this has come out. You can sort of dabble around by adding different flowers in, different colors, maybe even a few different trees, but on the whole, you want to try and keep it as natural looking as possible, just not Minecraft natural, if that makes sense. I've added in lily pads, flowers, reeds, custom cliffs, custom trees, and of course the all-important custom terrain. All of these factors are really important in making your own little area, and it takes a long time. This took me over an hour to make, and I did this all by hand, apart from pasting in the trees. And the key thing is, once you're past my sort of handmade area, you will go into the normal Minecraft world, but you can't really tell where that point is too much. So those are all things to consider, and I hope that you've learned something. Thank you very much for watching, and good luck with your own terraining. Goodbye!